Hello, everyone. You are live in the CNN newsroom. I'm Amara Walker in Atlanta. Tonight, Texas Senator Ted Cruz said he will self-quarantine after interacting with an individual at the Conservative Political Action Conference who later tested positive for the novel coronavirus. Now, Senator Cruz writes in a statement, quote, "I'm not experiencing any symptoms and I feel fine and healthy. Given that the interaction was 10 days ago and that the average incubation period is 5 to 6 days, that the interaction was for less than a minute, and that I have no current symptoms, the medical authorities have advised me that the odds of transmission from the other individual to me were extremely low." Now, this comes as the number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. has now hit 550 and 21 people have died. And according to the Surgeon General, the number of cases and deaths will continue to rise. 8 states have declared states of emergency, and in some communities, schools are closed, events are canceled, and people are being told to work from home. All of this causing chaos in the global economy. The Dow Futures is down 900 points after falling substantially over the past month. Oil prices suffered a historic collapse late tonight after Saudi Arabia shocked the market by launching a price war. Oil prices were already falling sharply because of the declining demand due to the coronavirus outbreak. Let's bring in CNN's Kristen Holmes now on our big story about Senator Ted Cruz self-quarantining. What more can you tell us about this?
Well, remember, Amara, this is the same conference that both President Trump and Vice President Pence attended. We'd already reached out to the White House to ask them once we learned that one of the attendees had tested positive for coronavirus. And the press secretary said that there was no interaction between Vice President Pence or President Trump and this attendee. But what we wanted to know was who this attendee actually did interact with. And now, of course, we have at least one answer. We're talking about Republican Senator Ted Cruz, who, as you stated, he says that he's discussed this with health officials, that because of the interaction, that they don't believe that this has a high risk of having the virus. But I do want to read you one part of his statement here, why exactly it is that he is self-quarantining. He says, "Out of an abundance of caution and because of how frequently I interact with my constituents as part of my job and to give everyone peace of mind, I have decided to remain at my home in Texas this week until a full 14 days have passed and since the CPAC interactions." This is incredibly important. This is the first lawmaker that we know of who has come into contact with someone who tested positive for coronavirus. And on top of that, we know that he was up in Washington this week. He was sitting in on luncheons with Vice President Pence. He was assumingly meeting with other lawmakers, having interactions with his staffers. And one of the big questions that we have continued to ask is who from this conference was exposed to coronavirus, who then could potentially be exposing the vice president or the president or White House staffers who interact with the president and vice president every single day. So this is a big deal here, and we're still waiting to find out how many other people interacted with this attendee. Now, the press secretary says that the Secret Service is working with the president's doctor as well as other government agencies trying to make sure that the president stays safe. But you really have to look at this from a larger perspective. Staying safe, what does that mean exactly? You're looking at a Republican lawmaker who we know has a relationship with Mitch McConnell, who has a relationship with Republican leadership that interacts with President Trump on a regular basis. So how exactly are they planning to keep him safe as we continue to see this virus spreading so quickly?
Kristen Holmes, you raise good points. Thank you very much for your reporting. Now, Washington State has become a hotbed of the virus with more than 135 cases confirmed there so far. In that state, ground zero of the coronavirus is the Life Care Center in Kirkland, Washington, outside of Seattle. 16 of the 18 deaths in that state have been associated with that facility. An employee has now tested positive for the virus, and 2 other employees have been hospitalized for symptoms. CNN's Omar Jimenez is outside that facility in Washington, joining me now with more. Omar, my first question to you is, are the officials in that facility getting the testing kits they need, especially for the frontline healthcare workers there, i.e. the nurses?
That's what they have been trying to get a handle on at this point. They told us that they were getting, or they have, I should say, the proper amount of testing kits for the residents that are here at this point, but that's partly because the residents have been so depleted in numbers in just the past month alone. It was less than a month ago, there were 120 residents here in total. Then, due to hospitalizations and sadly deaths, we are now down to just 55 residents. And so they have enough testing kits, but again, partly because of those depleted numbers. But again, as you touched on, it's not just residents here. There are employees that are showing up day in and day out to take care of these residents. And that's part of what officials touched on a little bit earlier today.
Once again, can't stress enough that everyone who's working inside that facility is a hero for the work they're doing to take care of these patients. Of the tests that we're doing, we still are not testing our employees inside. We don't have test kits to do that. That's an ongoing discussion that we are continuing to have with the various agencies, that we would like to be able to test our employees.
That ongoing discussion, of course, including trying to get enough testing kits for those employees, at least 70 of them showing symptoms, 3 of them hospitalized, and at least 1 of them testing positive for the novel coronavirus. Another thing that they are trying, and they told us they were asking for, came from a request that we heard from one of the families, in that there are people that died here but were not tested for the coronavirus prior to their death. And at this point, they haven't done any post-mortem tests, and that is something they say they are asking both state and federal officials help with as this moves forward. Amra.
Omar Jimenez on the story for us there in Kirkland, Washington. Thank you, Omar.